Well, good afternoon. We're here on Life Along the Merrimack. I'm Dyke Hendrickson, and this is a program in which we talk about the river, its people, and the Merrimack Valley. Today I'm with Mary Carrier, who is a former mayor, a knowledgeable person around town, and has much experience in government, and probably has a good understanding about the river and some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So, Mary, thank you very much for coming.
Oh, thank you, Dyke.
Yep. So I am Dyke Hendrickson, and I guess one of my first thoughts, Mary, is when we're talking about challenges here in Newburyport, the jetties and erosion is a frequent element here in Newburyport. It seems to be having a little challenges this week. There was a bad storm over the weekend. We didn't feel it so much, but I think there was quite a bit of reaction on the water. When you were around, and I think you were mayor in 1999 and 2000, was erosion a problem then? And did you folks work on it at the time?
No, not as much as it is over the years here. I think Plum Island always kind of had a problem, but not to the extent I think that has happened in the last 10 years, 5 or 10 years here. But we were more concerned about the working on the boardwalk, because the boardwalk had been in since the 1970s, and we were afraid when it was put down, the wood wasn't treated.
We're talking about the boardwalk along the river in the city.
Yes, right down in the central waterfront.
Yes,
And then they were worried about, because it wasn't treated and the wood was kind of wearing away, they were worried about the bulkheads underneath. So at the time, we were trying to get some funding to do that, which I did eventually with the Seaport group there, and I got, I forget how much it was we needed. We needed about $200,000 and they sent some underground divers. Mm-hmm. Governor Salucci was the governor at that time, and he was actually very good to Newburyport as far as money. Mm-hmm. I liked him, yeah.
That was such a successful program, and even now, wherever I am on the North Shore in Boston, people say the boardwalk is great, and it's just become such a centerpiece. Did people talk about the jetties at that time? It seems now they've been jetties there for more than a century in some form or another. And in 2014 and 15, as you know, they were made stronger and higher, and has made a difference on the waterfront. But was that a concern at the time, the jetties?
It wasn't really, but remember, we didn't have the water and sewer on Plum Island at that time. And so that was the problem, big problem I was dealing with, and Newbury also, because DEP was telling us that we had to put in water and sewer. And then we were also hearing, though, that because it was a barrier beach and sand, that, it couldn't be done. But they kept insisting. We had several meetings trying to work it out. Everyone was trying to figure it out at the time. Our representatives were really in there, Senator Jajuga and all of them. But actually, they finally came and said that if we didn't agree to do it, that they were going to tell everybody to get off the island. So that was a difficult one, and
well, they were partially right about that. As I look back on it, they did put the water and sewer out there, but it didn't work very well to put a good light on it. And as you know, they've been redoing much of the piping and the water and sewage out there.
I think that was one of the reasons. A lot of people were saying that, you couldn't put in the pipes and bury them with the sand, and what was happening. So they were happy with their tanks, their septic tanks and things like that. But again, there was, it came down that this is it. You do this or else. So I was working with the gentleman who was there in Newbury, had the gas station out there in Plum Island, and he passed away since then. But then I left office when all that was going on. We were still bargaining with them. It was decided. Then we started looking at contractors to do it, and but then I left. So I wasn't involved after that, but then, as we know, they did get water and sewer in there, and I think a lot of people still feel that that interfered with the natural scheme out there, and that's why the erosion really started.
Well, it also changed the character of Plum Island, as I recall, because in the early days, or at least up to 2000, there were many modest homes, and as you say, with septic tanks. When the water and sewer came out, it seems like that was the beginning of building very large houses, because they had more services at the time. And since then, last half dozen years particularly, everything that goes up is, about $1 million. And so there are very large houses there.
Well, I think they're seriously looking at the zoning now because, all over Newburyport. But the fact that the island in particular was not prepared for all of that. Some of the houses were put up on stilts, know, and but some of these houses, as you said, and then there's the hotel down at the end there, and all of this, they say, was upsetting nature. I mean, people were really, who had lived on the island most of their lives, were really adamant about it and protested quite a bit at the time, and. We tried to come up with a solution, but as I said, that was it.
Right. Well, erosion, as I recall, had a major effect on the Coast Guard because up until 1973, I believe the Coast Guard station was out there. It is now used as a balloting area for Ward 1. For parts of Ward 1, and of course it moved into the city. But as I understand it, over the years, they were right on the point, and that area would be damaged by storms or erosion, and so the Coast Guard decided to move into town.
Well, that was a smart move on their part, but I remember when they had the old firehouse out there also, with one engine in there, and they voted there. That was a polling place, and it's I think too a lot of it now too. You can't determine whether it's actually climate change now because we have had some really bad storms. But I think they had bad storms over the years too, and also the building and the I guess water and sewer. Maybe it had some. Maybe all of those things came together to cause it. But we were luckier in town, I think. So, but it was, and a lot of people. Put these houses very close to the water line also. I remember, actually, this is funny, when we first moved here, which is back in 77, we didn't plan to live there all the time, but we were looking at summer houses, and there was a house out there I think actually that's one that went into the water, so maybe that wasn't such a good idea. We got away from that one, but $48,000 for a two-story house furnished. And what I liked about it is you walked out your back door and you were on the beach. There it was, And I I used to dream of one of these in California, Laguna Beach or someplace. But it really for my husband wouldn't buy it, but for the price and it was furnished.
That sounds good. Well, until the storm comes and starts floating.
Well, we would have had a good few years out of it. I'll tell you.
Well, you mentioned 1977 coming to this area. Where are you from, Mary, and how did you find your way to Newburyport? And I am talking with Mary Carrier. She is the former mayor of Newburyport. I'm Dyke Hendrickson, and the show is Life Along the Merrimack. But Mary, how did you find your way to Newburyport?
Well, as most people know, I'm from New York, New York City, the Bronx to be particular. The closest water we had was the East River, the Hudson on the other side. But my husband's job, actually, yes, he was in the stereo business at that time. He had worked for Sony in New York and JVC, and at that time there was a speaker company, Epicure Speakers, here in Newburyport, and they were out on Hale Street. And first they were down at the James Steam Mill building. Right. That was their location. And so we had gone to Indiana again with Magnavox because that was their home base. And I wasn't thrilled with the Midwest not having any water or mountains or anything. So, he came home one day and said, I've been offered this job, and he showed me Newburyport on the map, and I said, "Oh, 4 hours from New York, let's go." Yes, so that's how we came. I had one. My daughter was 3, and then I was expecting my second one. So we were only going to stay 3 years.
Sure. Well, one of the things in the era that you've been here since '77, the community has really improved. The waterfront is very handsome now.
Yes,
so you must have been observing much of this as the improvements were made. Are you pleased with the way
Yes.
everything came out?
Well, yes. When we came, they were working on the boardwalk, and the downtown had been redone, and it was beautiful. Yes, in street and everything else. And then I went down to the south end. I remember the first day I came, I was meeting my husband down at the James Steam Mill building, and I remember looking at it and saying, "Is that safe to go in there?"
Sure.
It was really in pretty bad shape, and look at it now. You know. So as I said, the people who came before me had the foresight to save these buildings, and it was great. And now the South End is really the place to live.
Sure.
It's beautiful houses, yes.
Well, two Newburyporters were honored in the last year or so for their work. Jack Bradshaw,
Yes.
who was with the city,
Right.
And Jonathan Woodman, who was an architect. And those two people, as I think you know,
Two great guys did a lot for Newburyport.
they did a lot.
Yes.
There are plaques downtown to mark that. And another person that I recall from the past, not exactly that era, was Al Lavender. He was a former mayor here. And I bring up his name because it was in the news recently. He passed away several years ago when his airplane
Very sad.
crashed
Yes.
into a condo building in Methuen. And it was very sad. And a lot has come out about the challenges of flying a plane that was actually built from a kit. I've always wondered about that. If I built something, I wouldn't even get on a skateboard.
Right.
But this was the story about his situation. Now, Al was a good guy, and you must have known him quite well.
Al was a good friend and neighbor. We lived on the same street. And Urfit and I had run for city council, and then Al ran after that, and he was on the city council. So actually the newspaper made a remark that there must be something in the water on Rawson Hill Road. Yes, so
and that's up by the Anna Jakes Hospital.
by the Anna Jakes Hospital. So and then Al was on the council when I was in the mayor's office, and just wonderful. Well, great guy. In fact, it's funny. I was talking about Al to someone this morning, and it was just you couldn't meet a nicer guy. Even I said his opponents, like when he was in the mayor's office, and that people who would be maybe saying things. Al just liked everybody. Never took offense. Was friendly to everyone, and just a very much more so than I can say for myself, actually. But he was just a really nice person, and Betty and the whole family, just great people.
Yeah, that was such a shock. That accident.
Actually, I was talking to Al the night before it happened.
Oh, really?
And we had met at a wake, of all things, and he and Betty, and he told me about the airplane. He told me he had built this airplane, and I said, "My goodness," and I just couldn't believe it. He told me he was going to be flying it, and I just kind of made a joke to Betty, "Have you been up in it?" And she said no, and I said, "I don't think I'd go either." I just joking, because I know my brother-in-law had a plane, and my sister wouldn't fly in it, but. But the next day, someone called me. I hadn't been watching the news. I was out all day, and I got a call, and someone said, who I hadn't seen for a while, doesn't even live in the area, said, "Oh, I thought of you when I heard the news," and said about, they said Newburyport Mayor, and they said Al Lavender. And I said, "What about Al? I just saw him last night," and that was a shock. I mean, I just couldn't believe it.
It was.
And like I said, a nicer guy you couldn't meet. He really, Al was what you saw, just a nice person.
Well, you were mayor 1998 to 2000 in that area. What were some of the things you're proud of when you look back at when you were at City Hall?
Things were happening at that time, and we were looking for a senior center. I had been on a committee. The mayors had put me on a committee before that when I was on the council, and we had gone around the state looking at different senior centers. We looked at all these different locations in town, the Armory being one of them, and and it just never happened. The firehouse, way back before I came, that was considered.
Right.
So I have to say it's nice to be here and see this, and actually I have to congratulate the mayor and the city council for actually getting this done, because it's being used, and
Absolutely.
it's a wonderful building. But I have to say the library. The library, we were looking to build it. We had talked about doing it. There was putting it on the waterfront, and then there was a lot of people did not want that, obviously, because we wanted the park. And so then decided, most people, we had public meetings, wanted it where it was, and then to add on. And since we lost the YMCA,
right.
that left that piece of land there. And then we had the gas station on the corner, and I remember going to Governor Salucci, and we wanted money towards the library, and we had a great library committee who had worked very hard on this, and he said, well, do you have parking for it or whatever, and this, and
Well, there was a gas station right across the way, was there not?
Well, that was it, and they really weren't. They were looking to get out, and I thought, well, if we could put parking there, that would be great. So we took it by eminent domain, and because of that, then we got the money for the library and for the parking lot. So,
well, that was one of the great success stories. And
I left before it was finished, but I felt good that we got it started and had the funding for it and everything.
And the library here is so beloved. I remember when Mayor Holliday several years ago floated an idea to put a hotel right where the parking lot is, and then, of course, she was talking about putting parking under the hotel for the library. I mean, everyone is scratching their heads because it's such a wonderful combination of parking close by, a great library, and that was only out there for about 2 weeks. And I say this because I used to cover City Hall for the Daily News. I covered City Hall on the waterfront, so I went to all these meetings. And if there's one institution here in town that people love and want to protect, it's the library. So congratulations
I have to say,
you.
I probably use it more than anyone else. But also, too, when the mayor was talking about that, I think I wrote a letter to the paper because Bill Plant came one day and was really excited about it, but saying that because we had gotten money for that to build the library, that I didn't know whether it would be possible to use it for some other use, because a lot of times when you get money from the state money, and it's earmarked for this, it's hard to change. I don't know if that was true or not, but it worked. So, yeah.
When you were mayor, were there issues that you wish could have moved along faster? I always hear that leaders can be frustrated. You have to work with the council. You have to find the money. You have to get community approval for many things. Was there one project that you had that you would have liked to see have a little more progress?
Yes, the land up at Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill came on the market at that time, and we
the residential area.
Yes, we got first dibs on it, and I wanted to buy it, and the city council voted on it the first time in the first reading to do it. And then somehow, I don't know what happened with the second reading, they thought it was too much money. We had some money. I think we had like about $2 million, and it was like $4 million to buy it, which was a steal, really, for all that land. And I thought we could, at any point, we could section it off if we wanted to, but it was good to have it. So, and then we had what I felt was a terrible developer came in, and he just wanted to crowd houses on there, as you know, and the residents that were around Maudsley there, they protested and everything. But anyhow, the city council voted against buying it. So, but in order dealing with the developer, we managed to get 10 acres out of it. Yeah,
plus you have a nice soccer field there and some open space.
At that time, we thought we would need another school because the Kelly School was going to close and whatever eventually, and we were going to put another school out there for the West End because that was developing. And so we got the 10 acres, figuring, if we need a school. But then when the school wasn't being built and the soccer people were looking for more fields, I said, well, you might as well use that land until such time. And so they have their soccer field. So these are the little things that I feel good about. I felt badly about the overbuilding out there at Cherry Hill, but they're beautiful houses, I guess, and they seem to like it. But it was such a pristine area. It was very nice. Also, I started the renovation of the high school as far as looking at the getting the bids out and all that. But then that also, when you leave office, then it's not your project anymore. So, but that got done too. But there were a lot of things in the fire at the time. So.
It was a busy period. You know, Mary, you cover city council yourself now. You're a reporter and you monitor the council pretty well. In fact, you have a show right here on our station. What are the issues now in front of the city council? Is pot shops a very large thing? And also, is the sewage treatment plant one thing that's frequently discussed? Now, one of the things that we talk about...
They're worried about that erosion there, too, so they have to protect it somehow. In fact, last night...
the sewage treatment plant.
That's for Plum Island. That's another one. Another one. But the wastewater treatment plant, yes, that's the new one, and I think there was something there about, protecting that also from some erosion or something happening there. But I know that last night, actually, in the mayor's update, the mayor said she has a meeting with Senator Markey on the 27th, this Wednesday, and the Army Corps of Engineers in Boston. And they're going to talk about the possibility, which we've talked about for years too, dredging the river, dredging the Merrimack. So that's in the plan. I don't know if there'll be any luck with that. We always felt that if the Merrimack could be dredged, that there might be other uses there as far as bringing bigger boats and stuff like that. And that was one of the plans that people had talked about, but they've been talking about that for many years. So now the mayor is addressing it, and I guess, she'll see what happens. There's a new administrator there now, a new head there, so they might have some luck.
Well, in terms of one city working with another, one of the elements that we talk about on the show is the fact that frequently there are discharges of sewage into the Merrimack River from as far up as Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yes.
When heavy rains come, the water is mixed into the sewage treatment plant, and sometimes it gets overwhelmed and sewage is put into the river. Is it a hard thing to work with different communities like with Amesbury or Lowell and Lawrence and Manchester? Is it hard to get everyone together and say, look, we've got a big problem? Now, in Newburyport, we're at the end of the line, so we're particularly concerned. But right now, in many cases, they don't have to say when they discharge, and they don't have to say how much they're discharging.
Right.
So would this be a challenge, getting everyone to the table?
It is. It is hard to work with communities, especially ones as big as Lawrence and Lowell, and their history that they have. Two of the factories and things like that, and the fact that they have so many more people there now. And but the one indication that was always I wondered about was again the clam beds. We've never, even though we have tons of clams in this area, never been able to eat them. They've never passed specifications. And we have the biggest clam processing plant out there on Plum Island, where the clams from Boston come up here to be processed. And we can't eat our own clams. And it's funny, because of this, I went out specifically when I was in the mayor's office, and I said to the fellow, I want a tour, I want to know what's happening. Why? Because people were actually eating them. Some people say they're fine, and I have to say a lot of them live to very old ages. So.
Well, I talked to Paul Hogg, the harbor master, about that, and 2 years ago they actually reopened the clam flats for a week or two. So momentarily that was good. But he pointed out that every clam does go to the purification plant, from this area.
But it has to reach a certain number on the machine. I went through the whole thing with them, from the clams coming in, putting them in this huge machine where they're monitored and registered and numbers come up on the thing, and they just sometimes, not that far below, but just below where they can't be, they're not up for edible, but... a lot of people are eating them.
Well, our clam expert here is Mary Carrier, former mayor. The show is Life Along the Merrimack. I'm Dyke Hendrickson, and I wanted to ask you a little about what's going to be happening in terms of future schools here, if you think more will be built, or do you think we're at a point where, the population is not expanding that much, so we're probably stable with the classrooms we have?
Well, it's funny. It's funny because I was having that conversation with my husband also. The fact that all the changes and the new people coming in and, more houses being built, the population never seems to grow past 17,000 or whatever,
right.
So I guess with the people coming in, there's also a big exodus of people who take jobs in other places or whatever, or buy houses and sell them. But the Bresnahan School, there seems to be, fine. The reason I had a laugh about Cherry Hill there is because when Lisa Mead was mayor the first time, I was on the committee to look at areas for schools, and they were talking about a school in the West End, rebuilding the Brown School down there.
Well, that's still being discussed.
Closing the Kelly School, and we thought we'd have I think it's 2 or 3 grade schools, and then the high school we were in the midst of talking about how that was going to be improved and added on to, and now we seem to be doing just fine with the one grade school and the one high school.
Sure.
So, and we used to have school choice too, and then they stopped school choice, and now I think they're looking for more school choice because it does bring money into the area. I know when I was on the school committee as mayor, we had we got quite a bit of money out of the school choice, and everybody wanted to be in Newburyport, and so now I think they stopped it, and now I think they'd like to bring it back.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, Mary, and one question I wanted to ask you, as you look at the city council and the community which you've known for decades, what is the big issue now here in Newburyport, would you say?
Probably, I think the in-building there, the building houses behind houses and things like that. And although the population doesn't grow, we keep building houses. So it's amazing. But, I mean, I don't know what the solution to that is. They always turn out to be nice developments.
Right. Plus,
they're done very well.
There is a demand. Everything that gets built or everything that goes up for sale seems to sell.
Right. And they don't stay on the market very long. Even the huge houses on High Street, where the farmer funeral home used to be, and they put in 3 or 4. The only thing I noticed is they do change hands very quickly. I think that huge house used to be the Olney house, Dr. Olney's house. That's been added on to. I think it's got 3 garages now at the back, and constantly being worked on. And I think that's changed hands a few times. So I guess we shouldn't complain about people wanting to come here in the building. So. I don't see any really major problems. We'll see when the garage opens. The garage is looking good,
Yes.
I mean,
this is a parking garage in the downtown.
The new parking garage that hasn't opened yet. That'll open, I guess, in April, late April or May, and we'll see what the traffic's there. The one problem I see in Newburyport now is to try and get out onto High Street. I think they're eventually going to have to put a light somewhere, or maybe 2 lights, because you can sit there for a long time, especially in the evening and early morning. A lot of traffic, and then you have the high school there, so school buses, but that's just for a short period of time. But Newburyport will always survive, and we will.
Yeah, and the period you lived here and that I've lived here, I mean, this is kind of a golden era, as it were. The parks worked out well downtown.
Right, the parks are beautiful.
The firehouse has turned out well. The Maritime Museum is doing well.
I can't find anything to complain about. Yeah, everything is wonderful here. A great place to,
Well, it's funny, when we were looking around for a house, we looked on High Street, but we had to buy on Low Street. But looked on High, bought on Low. But nevertheless, it's been, and we have a large field behind us, and we're hoping, a farmer's field, and we're hoping that that is not picked up. As you say, developers want to come here, and we'll just see what Low Street there's a large
That
part.
farm, I look at that and I just think, I loved that when I first came. It was like being in Ireland, with the horses out there. And
Well, talking about Ireland, Ireland is one of your favorite things. Now, in a short period of time, what do you like about Ireland?
What's not to like? It's a small country, but it's a friendly country and great. So, and my family's from there, so I have relatives over there, and I spent summers there as a kid. So it's a great place to visit or a great place to live, retire, whatever.
Well, this is good.
Next to Newburyport.
Of course. Well, you went from the Bronx to Newburyport, and your avocation is Ireland. Well, this is good. Thank you very much, Mary. This was Life Along the Merrimack. I'm Dyke Hendrickson. We talk about the river, the Merrimack Valley, and
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And your books are great, and I just think that's. I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're about finished here, and we'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll talk again about our local area. Thank you very much, Mary.